In the Old Testament times, we saw where the priests employed the Levitical administrators as apostolic leaders of the early church, and this demanded the administrative assistance of the deacons and the helps. So in the church, as we learned earlier, is where we have elders, we have a board of elders, and these are the men who govern the church. They are the ones who will need to be able to ensure that the laws and the principles of the church are adhered to. Now, the effective administrator relates to leadership consciously applying the following functions. We look at the functions. Am I clear? Yeah. Okay. So what we're looking at now are the functions of who? Who are we really looking at? The administrator, correct? Because this is the person now who will help to make things work. They're the ones who apply certain principles and enforce them because, of course, a leader can't do everything. And so, as we said, in the corporate world or out there in another context, it will be like an executive secretary. But in the church setting, we now see the help coming from the board of directors or the board of elders, whatever it may be. Depends on your church and how your church organization is set up. In my church, which is quite a large church, we have board of elders, we have the board that governs the church, and then you have the board of elders. I'm not sure how they separate it, but I know that the board really governs the church. The board of directors, they make decisions, and the pastor, of course, chairs that board, and he really has the last say. I mean, sir, I can just say this, is that he will say there are certain things that I make decisions, but even though that there is a board. So he really displays the quality of a leader in terms of he takes the bull by the horn whenever things need to be done, but there's still a board that helps in ushering and carrying forth the decisions that are made. So we see where there are task-oriented ability. They are given different tasks that need to be carried out. There's also an eye for detail. These persons need to be able to see more than just what the eye even sees. They must be able to perfect that which the task that they are given. And they must be able to ensure that things are done accordingly. You dot the I's and you cross the T's and stuff like that. This is what I think. As Dr. Morgan says, the meticulous mind of the administrator is very careful and precise. So, because a lot depends on the person.
The task-oriented ability is being able to carry out the day-to-day tasks.
The day-to-day tasks. All right. And of course, I think that this is very important. We must have a supportive attitude. Administrator, it is important. And I look back at even Moses and when his hands went up and they got tired, there was somebody there to hold the hand up. It is important that the administrator really is somebody who is very supportive and really takes on the burden of responsibility. A servant's heart. I also believe that as a leader, we're not only leaders because the title says we are to lead, but we are servants. Mm-hmm. And it is important that we recognize that, especially when God calls us to this particular role, we must be able to serve people.
I would like to say that I always see leadership as being able to, and certainly first as a leader, you must first know how to serve and be served, basically. The servant's heart. You really should know how to. And in being in that position, it is basically an honorable position, because you're learning to accept the needs of others. And you yourself should also be able to receive that from others.
And here it is, because the servant's heart speaks to the administrator who will know, as you would say, serve the leader. So the leader has to be in a position to be able to accept being served. Mm-hmm. Accept the fact that, there are certain things that because you're the leader and I am basically your help, I would want you to do it. but I will take on that role because I know hold you in a high esteem. I see you as the person who is my, the person who really higher. They hold a place of authority, and so I believe that there are things that I should do for you to even help you to make your work, make your burden even lighter. Because the task of leadership can be hard. It becomes difficult. As we learned earlier, it is a lonely road. And so if there's something that the administrator can do sometimes to make your life easy, a little better.
So the administrators can be board of deacons.
As I said, it all depends on the organizational structure of your church. I can speak because of what I'm exposed to at my church. It may be, I don't know if you have elders at deacons.
We don't use elders, we use deacons, reverend, volunteers, and all those things. We don't use elders. We don't use the word elders. As I said the time that I was wondering, because my coworker, she was an elder. So I was looking at elder as, although it is recognized in the scripture as because of their denomination, they use elders. Or
I didn't even know that you had a woman who the elder. I always thought it was a male role.
Well, my pastor is a woman.
No, nothing is wrong with that.
So I just want to find it clear.
I would imagine so, because it is. I think here it says
boards of council.
They'll be on it. The
deacons would be
a part of the body.
A part of the body of come under that administrative office where they help to lead. They have to manage, I would want to say. I don't want to.
Because just like you, we have somebody up there who make decision, and then we have the local one.
How I look at the administrator is like, like an office manager. That's where you ensure that the building is right.
Things are
yes.
Like the light, things that as a leader, caring for your flock and you don't have much time to be thinking about.
Yeah, that is why I asked, because it's the board of deacons who does those things. See about those things and help.
Yeah, they will fall under the office of the administrator, of the administrator / management, because they now manage what happens down there on that level. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. We have to begin, when we ask this question, we have to begin with the understanding that we get from the scriptures. And the role of deacons, when they were appointed in the New Testament, they were appointed as those who, as they use the term, who serve tables. In other words, they really helped in a supportive work, a supportive ministry, and they helped the spiritual leaders, so to speak, start to use the term spiritual, but the spiritual leaders are those who give spiritual leadership to the church, and the others, the deacons, they serve the spiritual leaders in practical ways, and so their role is administrative and can be practical, helps. It is patterned after the Old Testament concept of the Levites. The Levites serve the priests. The priests are the ones who were the intercessors, and they carried, they offered sacrifices, and they made atonement and all of that kind of stuff. But the Levites would clean the temple, make sure the utensils are polished, make sure the candles are lit, and so on. And if if you read in the Old Testament, you will see all the different roles and tasks of deacons, of Levites. And that is a model that came over to the New Testament. Now, the fact that you have a different system in your church, what you have to look for is not so much what people are called. Like Denise is saying, her church is run by a board of directors. There's no such thing in the Bible, you know. But what is really happening is that in the Bible, the reason why we need a board of directors is because we're incorporated within a nation system that requires legal incorporation. And so the church is really owned and run by, as far as the government is concerned, they don't care who's the pastor and the elder, and they don't know who are the directors. And so some churches have borrowed, we talked about this last night, they borrowed the system from out of the world. And so we have a board of directors. And then they also have elders. Now, one may say that board of directors may be the elders, and then you still have elders. Or, in some respects, the board of directors are playing the role of the deacons, because they are in charge of the finances, they're in charge of the property, they're in charge to make all these decisions, and the church has simply put them as the top leadership in the church, because they are the ones legally responsible for all the resources and everything in the church. It is not surprising, therefore, that the pastor says the buck stops with him, because he is recognizing a distinction between the practical managerial leadership of the board and the spiritual responsibility that is needed to posit the anointing and, all the decision making. It has to be posited in a spiritual source. Now, if you ask me to correct that church, I would say that you should rather make the church put as the top rung of leadership in the church the elders, because the elders are spiritually responsible for the church, in which the lead elder, call him whatever you wish, you may call him the pastor, or you may call him the apostle, or whatever, or the angel, but he is the lead elder of the church, and you have around him the eldership that's responsible for ensuring the spiritual level of the church, integrity of the church, make sure that the moral integrity of the church is there, make sure that biblical teachings are biblical, and so on. And that's really what elders are. They are the governors of the church, spiritual governor. And as I say, you can have a lead person there. And then now, you can have what I would call the managerial administrators, or the support system, which is really the deacons. And they support the work of the elders and the pastor. And so you have the deacons that could probably be in charge of the finances, the work amongst the poor, make sure that the poor are taken care of, the property, make sure the property is maintained, and so on. The furnishings, they're in charge of ushering and things like that. And then you have another set of persons, because none of the above really can grow the church. They are the protective and serving arm of the church. But the ones who really grow the church are the ministers of the church. And they are a different sect altogether. Now, they may be part of the eldership, or at least the head ministers may be part of the eldership. But ministers are persons who are responsible for the teaching, responsible for the caring pastorally of the people, are responsible for evangelizing, sending out people to evangelize, are responsible for the teaching the people. What we call Sunday school or whatever we call it, develop a whole, there's a need for a whole teaching arm of the church. So you can see now, you can shape your church however you want to do it. But you need the principles, you need to adhere to the principles. And that's what I would correct in a church. The principles. But any kind of wine skins, as long as it can contain the wine. You see, and the Bible teaches us principles of leadership. It doesn't necessarily tell us how to structure your church. And a lot depends on the maturity of your church. If you are a young church, and somebody comes to start this church, that guy is the one authority in the church. You have 20 people in the church, 50 persons, 150. But as it grows, you're going to realize that you need to have corporate leadership. So you appoint eldership. And as it grows, you're going to hear that the widows and the orphans are being neglected. People are poor, and nobody is there to take care of the ushering on a Sunday morning and setting up chairs. So you need deacons. You see? So whatever you call them, it's the functions you have to look at, and you have to look at the authority line. So, in my own advice to churches, the board doesn't come in there at all. The board is separate. And the board serves the city, serves the nation, is corporately responsible to the nation. And they're answerable to the company, they call it, but the registrar of companies. See? So you may need to have a nice good lawyer on your board. Some churches have a board and they are not necessarily members of the church. You see? That's not ideal, but what you really need is to have legal advice. You have to have financial accountability and management there. You need to have a corporate secretary, somebody who understands corporate intricacies of what is required to remain with integrity as far as the Companies Act is concerned, and so on. So what I advise is, because the board owns the church, so to speak, they are there on behalf of, in the Companies Act, you would have the members of the company.
In most cases, let's say Jamaican context, most times the pastor really own the church. Because he's the one that will tell you that he mortgaged his house to protect the property.
Right.
And build the building.
And that's how it started. And in most cases, they get in trouble. You see, it's a big problem. Because when you have I know some of these churches, big church, thousands of people in the church now. And when you really, where I'm going now, I'm going to Eastern Caribbean, and I'm having a retreat with the church leadership. Church has been around for the last 30 years, and they couldn't tell me who are the board members because the pastor ran the church. You see, and now I'm saying, but I want to know when the registrar of companies ask, you know, and the church is in trouble legally, and they're running into trouble financially, who are they going to come and hold? The pastor? They want to know who are the directors. See? Well, they're getting in order, and 2 months ago I ordained 21 persons in the church. Elders and deacons and ministers.
21.
Yes. It's a big church. And they've been going on for all these years. You see, but they had a strong leader who ran the church. You see?
One man show.
And he's no longer there. Okay? He passed. So now when we meet, I'm going to be meeting with the elders and the deacons and the ministers. And we have to put it in order and help them to, because if it's not in order, you can get away, you know, as long as you have a nice, good, strong leader and everybody trust him. But any problems that come up, if you don't have a problem-solving mechanism, you're in trouble. I've had to deal with churches in which the pastor owned the building, they mortgaged his house and buy it, and it's in his name. But the board owns the church, owns it, owns all the resources, owns it. And he's in danger of being kicked out as a pastor. So he could lose all of that. Yeah, it has happened. You see? And one of the big tasks that we have in Jamaica now, because over the last 50, 60 years, a lot of churches have grown. The way I was saying last night, with a Hera Blair, a Almina, a this or that. Now they have done well, but a lot of churches are in trouble because they developed a one-man bit, but legally they don't own it, and they could lose all that they have done. You know, it's a big problem. And if you don't have the right structure, when decisions or when the people rise up, see, at first you are the big cheese and everybody just follow you. But when you have matured people over 20 years, everybody wants to make decisions too. You taught them how to hear the voice of God, and everybody hear the voice of God. They're not the same God, but you know, they come to the meeting to tell you what the dream they had and what God has been saying. And some of them will even prophesy, but they're already prophesying. So you know, this is why we're talking about church leadership, and I'm laying out some principles that you should bear in mind, because when you want to correct something, you have to correct it with the right principles in place. Okay, sorry,
All right, do we have to go through all of these?
No, you don't have to go through all of them.
Here they are for us to look at. You know, the scope and demand of an administrative manager, and there are different areas: the systems, the resources, the facilities, information and data management, time management, media management, and marketing management. And since time won't permit us to go through all of that, I will just conclude. Here it says that the church and the Christian ministry must develop under the authority and management which integrates spiritual leadership with practical administration. And I do agree 100%. We have to be we have to be cognizant of the fact that the people who are really the resources of the church, I call it the resources because they are the ones who not only help to build the church, they bring in money. I'm putting that part in there.
Very important.
It is of that time, which is they are the persons who pay the rent or mortgage, the lights, and they give to the poor and they help in the different ministries. And they also, for our church, I cannot say, I refer to my church, we also tithe. We tithe to the, what do you call it now, the overhead, the open Bible, the overseer. So we too, we not only instill that the congregant tithe, but we too, the church tithe. So we give 10% of whatever it is that we collect. And so we must remember that it is people that we're dealing with, and so the spiritual emphasis is important as well as practical management. We have to be able to balance it. We have to be able to manage what we have as we started out. We manage resources, we manage our time, and most importantly, we ensure that people's spiritual needs are being met. People are being trained, they are being taught the word, and so they are now able to not only get nourishment, but they're able to nourish others. So we ensure that they get the proper spiritual nutrients in order to be better persons. And so, as we said, the center of the church is concerned is people enriching their lives. And when we do this, we now begin to explore their potentials. When we have given into them, when the church has done all of this as an organization and as a leader, when we image ourselves and we try to transform lives, because that is what a real leader does. They transform people's lives here and then. And I always say that the church is like a hospital. People will come in one way, but they should leave another way. I mean, not all persons will be healed, but at least they will get some form of treatment, some form of medicine will be applied to the areas that they were deficient in then. And so they become either stronger, and so therefore we now can see the potential. We must have an eye. As good leaders, I believe that we ought to see the potential in you, Mr. Ferguson. I must be able to say, that gentleman over there. That's what I'm saying. I must be able to see in you. I must have that spiritual eye as well as the leadership qualities that I display to say that, I am seeing something in you. Explore the potential, bring it out, and develop it. And so here we will have, as our lecturer told us, that not only to lead in the church setting, but here we are molding leaders for the larger community, for the context in which we live, for our children to emulate, for, to become better persons out there.
When you talk about spiritual life, it doesn't mean that you actually see the person doing things, but also sometimes people are very quiet in church. But you should reach that level. Yeah.
Discernment.
It is the discernment to see that. I just add to what you say. I disagree with what you say. Even if the person is quiet, calm, and everything, you can have that discernment to see that person can.
And to cap all of that off, it means then, as we had alluded to earlier, that we ought to have passionate hearts. I was sharing with the brethren here before, sir, that in my type of business, sometimes you have to be aggressive. And I have to learn the art of when I come to church as a leader, that you drop that. Take on a different, a different mindset, because if I should walk into the church with what I just dealt with in my business, I'm going to come across as very aggressive, maybe proud. And so you have to be able, as a leader, be able to transform. You have to be able to know how to relate in order to translate people's lives and to bring them into where they ought to go. So it is important for us to have a passionate heart, and it must be kindled with discipline. It's the discipline. It says here, disciplined hands to achieve the will of God, ultimately for His glory. It all is for His glory. Wherever we are placed, whatever we are called to do, it must all be for the common goal, for God alone to be glorified, and not for us as individuals to be glorified. And I think it is important that sometimes as leaders we tend to want to say, I need that man. I can't ever mean by that one word. must be to glorify God. And that's my.
I would like to commend the three persons who gave some leadership in sharing this morning. I asked them at very short notice if they would apply themselves to it, and I don't know if they slept last night, but they did a very, very good job. I think we should give them a hand. Great. Great. Actually, although everybody didn't get this opportunity, I saw them as examples of you all. And I just chose them. I could have chosen anybody else. So it gave me an idea as to where the class is at because of the level of, number one, application. Secondly, the level of understanding. And thirdly, the level of articulation. And fourthly, all of them engaged you all in the experience. And I thought that this is marvelous. So I want to commend you and commend the class. Yes, you want to ask?
Could I answer a question? It's not about Levites and how it related to the church, although maybe not management. In time gone by, I'll just give you a scenario wherein that my husband, grandmother, father was a deacon or a Levite or a deacon or elder in the church, and she got pregnant. His daughter got pregnant, and she had to leave the house because she could not say, is it that it is a sign that, if I remember you said that a Levite is a person that he manages his house and all of it. Is it coming from that end, wherein that if she's pregnant, she had to leave the house? Because is it from that and
I will let Pablo answer that. You want to respond to that?
I would add to Pablo.
Okay, yes.
If there's anything to add.
Did you get the question? What she's saying is that in her family line, this elder, his daughter got pregnant and she had to leave the home. She had to leave the home. So she's asking, why did she have to leave the home? Did she have to leave the home because as an elder, his household was proven not to be in order?
I would say it's a good principle to hold that the elder should be in charge of his household and he should apply the rules and he should be adhere to all those, but he's not perfect. So I think when his daughter got pregnant, then grace should come in. Grace should come in and grace should be applied to the situation. In our, he probably failed in that area. Or maybe he probably doesn't have anything to do with the daughter getting pregnant. Probably did all he needed to do, but she still went and got pregnant. So in that scenario now, we apply the same grace that all of us is expecting from God when we mess up. And apply to that situation. I don't think we reach a point where she's out.
Okay, so you are suggesting that we recognize that his house was not in order.
Right.
It may not be his fault, but the result is there, and so that there is a breach in the situation. But now how you handle it, it could be, so she's assuming that it was handled right, and she wants to know why did it have to be handled in that way? But you're saying it didn't have to be handled in that way. Okay, and now Denise is going to just...
No, I want to really say that when you speak of getting your house in order, as a leader, the Timothy, I think it's the book of Timothy, in Timothy, he basically tells us there are guidelines as to how one should operate as a leader. And because he was an elder or deacon in the church, there's a lot of responsibility. He has to live a life that will now be so transparent and so effective that his household is really needs to line up. And he has to ensure whatever he has to do, he has to ensure that his household lines up. Because as leader, this is what the Bible tells us. There are certain things that need to be done as a leader, and especially when it comes down to elders and deacons, because they really are the fathers. They really are the ones who. I'm getting to the point, but what I'm trying to say is that they really have to live their life, and they have to try and ensure that the life is lived. However, it happens, and we all mess up, and we all fail. How do we deal with it? Maybe in some churches you would have to step down. Not necessarily for the young lady to leave the house.
Before we go any further,
Okay.
is it that if I'm a leader, elder in the church, and my son gets a young lady pregnant, or is it my failure that caused my son to get someone pregnant?
It's not your failure, it's just a responsibility
So why-
that needs,
so-
it's just a responsibility, it is a heavy burden that you have to take on. That's why
I want to jump in.
okay, jump
But
in.
I think that the question then is, what does it really mean to get our house in order? Coming back to what Cameron said, is how we handle the situation, because I can set down the laws and the rules. We have our worship, we have our, whether it be, we set aside a few days or so we have the worship, we share together. I am sure that you adhere to the rules and the laws. When you leave my presence, I don't know what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
Definitely.
You come home and you share, I stole something, we deal with it here. We deal with it. So for me, it's really, getting your house in order is really how you manage your affairs, how you manage your finances. It's not that, I do something wrong and that's it. And because I've done it wrong, it means that we're not lining up. But, all right.
Yeah, but
You know,
yeah. So even so when you bring for that child, right, between 0 to 6 years, those are the most important years in that child's life. You're able to mold that child in the way you want. But when that child becomes of a certain age, it's no instruction and it's no correction. The rod will help, will not help, right? So when that child goes out now and make a mistake, it is not that you as the elder didn't do your work, but it's just that that child might just lead to temptation, which all of us is subjected to.
But just
So then,
so
so then why is it that if I am an elder, I'm doing such a good job? It means that if my child makes a mistake, I have to put out that child out of the house, or I have to resign from the church. It cannot be. Because remember now, yeah, it cannot be because the child made the mistake, right? All right, let me share a situation. I took in this girl from about 8, 9, treat her like my daughter. In 5th form, that girl got pregnant. Now, I sent her home. And my reason for sending her home is that I took her up and I deal with all of the expenses. And then I told her that if they get pregnant, anything like that, I cannot take care of you and the child. So that was my major reason.
So there were guidelines, there were
Right.
rules set out.
But if I was able to, chances are, and even though my heart still goes out to her, because I could have decided if I could have afforded it to say, listen, I'm going to take care of your body. Because just as Cavalier said, the same grace that we expect from God, because as leaders we sin, right? And if God was saying that because you sin, it's time for you to go on somebody else, and then I mean, if it will just be repeating, you would have a leader there.
Let me just put this. I just put it because I know we have to go. All right, in your
We don't have to go.
I have to. In your case, I'm not sure what position you hold. As I always say, the word supersedes all that we think, all that we perceive. And there's sometimes that the word will go against our own feelings. It's very difficult sometimes to adhere by the word of God. And so Timothy, the book of Timothy outlines what is expected of a leader. It's not necessarily a pastor, but it really speaks to even the elders who hold a very high position in the church, as we have discussed earlier. Therefore, what am I saying? It is a responsibility, it's a heavy task that you have taken on. You must know whether you can carry out this task. You have to ensure that there are guidelines and rules that are set in your home. Because at the end of the day, the responsibility is on your head. Now, I will not send a child out there because a child cannot function in that on her own. I would not do it if I was an elder, but I would step down because it would have meant then that I failed the word. It's not the
Which
word.
word?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Again, we are dealing with hypothetical situations. I know. Yeah. We're dealing with hypothetical situations and we're trying to bring principles to bear. But you did bring a real life example. Okay, so we are now dealing with not the general principle, but your situation. And so we can deal with that, but then that's your situation is not the same as other situations. Okay, let me just cut through this. You use terms like responsibility. That's very important. Use terms like rules, expectations, all of those are very important. We are nevertheless leaning in our application of in judging the situation and in applying solutions. We're leaning more on the side of being punitive. So when, for example, Denise says, you need to step down because your house is not in order, and then all of you rail up against her, it's because what is hitting you is, but did I cause it? Perhaps you did, but that's not the issue now. The issue is not, did you cause it? The issue is responsibility. But what are you responsible for? Are you responsible for what went wrong? Perhaps, and perhaps not. If you step down, which I think is a good idea, rather than send her out, not in your situation, but in the situation you said here. If you step down, it should not be seen necessarily, unless it's proven, that you are being punished as an elder because your house is not in order. What it should mean is that you're stepping down because you have to be now part of the restorative process. If I step down as an elder because my daughter got pregnant, and I'm not to be blamed necessarily, perhaps I wasn't watchful or whatever, but if I step down, it would be because I must now give attention to restoring my family. And that is very important, you see. So they're not punishing me for that. But whether it's they're requiring it of me or I am taking the initiative myself to say, ladies and gentlemen of this church, something has happened in my home and I need a leave of absence in order to correct it. That's the way to go. And so I want to Yeah. Yeah. So I want us to begin to think like this. This is transformational leadership. That does not just come down on the rules and the laws, though you must always apply the rules and the laws, but remember that rules and laws are not only governed by sanctions, but also governed by grace. This is one of the marvels of the new covenant. When it says that you're not under the law, it doesn't mean that you're not to obey the law. But it means,
Can I just ask one question?
wait, before, but it means that part of the law is not just what it says you must do, it's what it says will happen to you if you do it, or if you don't do it. The soul that sins must die. Well, the soul sins. And that's what they brought to Jesus. Should we stone this woman? You see? What did he do? He moved to the higher law. Which is why he said, except you exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you won't make it into the kingdom. Scribes and Pharisees would stone her to death. But what he's saying now is you have to exceed that and become redemptive and restorative. See if you can save her rather than kill her. See if instead of throwing her out, you can now embrace her. If she wants to be. If she's repentant. If she's not repentant, you can't help her. See? And and that's a responsibility of leadership. The responsibility of leadership is to say, okay, we have a problem in our home. I don't need for you to tell me who did it, what was wrong. What I do know is that I'm taking responsibility to restore it. And that's a great elder. And so you may take 6 months off, you take a year off, and then you come back with good news. You say, my daughter had a bouncing baby girl. Let us bless this girl. We're going to bring this girl into church. Really? An illegitimate baby? There's no baby that's illegitimate. See? So, in case you didn't know, no child coming into this world comes into this world without God's permission. Even if you go out and you're a prostitute, or you're raped, at that point, you can have sex 50 times and nothing happens. And you think you get away. And you have gotten away. But the 51st time, why? Because God has decided, not necessarily to punish you, to bring a baby. God has decided that He's going to use this disobedient act that has been in it. Well, at least you've fallen to temptation of the devil. God is going to say, I'm going to use this seed right now to beat the devil. So don't abort that child. Let the child come, because that child is going to save the world. And tell the devil, you remember when you make my mother and father, I run around the place and I have drop-stick every day, and the devil is going to be sorry he did it. So we should always be thinking redemptively, and we should be thinking, how can we responsibly redeem a situation, even where I was at fault? That's very important. Okay, we don't want Dennis to leave here, and we're not going to this now. So, no, don't go yet. You can't really go in now. Listen now, assignments. Here it is, assignments. This is in this syllabus. The syllabus, page 5 to 7. Syllabus. Syllabus, the beginning. It's just to read it, and then we're going to go to the back. Okay, we have 3 assignments. 4 gradings, 4 different gradings you get. 1, there are course content notes that you have, you've been going through them, and you have to respond to them. So the first assignment is what we call the response summaries to the course content notes. And you need to answer double-spaced. Summaries of the course content notes must be submitted by the student in response to the review questions related to each group of CCN topics. Each group, you have 1A, 1B, you have 2A, 2B, 2C, you have 3A, 3B, 3C, probably 3D too. Yeah, each of them is a group. That's how they are numbered, right? Now, you have to you have to respond to those questions. All right? Now, those questions are at the back, which we're going to just look at. Page 96. But don't turn to that yet. Okay. You're going to answer all of those, and you should have been doing it as we've been going on along, so that you remember them. See, what were your motives and expectations in signing up for this course? And then, having read the course syllabus now and perused the topical themes outlined, what outcome goals would you now set for yourself within your ministry and personal life? Okay? In outlining this at the top, we said the following questions are guidelines. Forest guidelines, say that word. Guidelines. They're not exam questions. They're guidelines for responding to the course content notes and the topics of the course. The CCN are grouped as related topics. Questions encourage the student to give some care to reading and applying the thoughts and principles of each topic. You apply them to yourself. The appendices may also provide useful learning material and practical exercises. Now, it is not designed as a question and answer format, okay, but more to prompt the student in reading through the course content notes with its topical outline and objectives, to respond and record their reflections as journal entries in keeping with their own learning experience, and each question may elicit more than one separate entry. Each question may elicit more than one separate entry. In other words, you may respond twice to one question. Okay? Now, so you go through these. Sir, there is, there is, but I'm just telling you this, that if you can't handle Moodle, email them to me. Yes. Okay. All right. So there are 3 N.
Hello, sir.
To understand the leadership.
Hello, sir. They could also let me help them to handle Moodle. Help them handle Moodle.
Okay. Kojo is saying, listen, that's why I'm here. You have to learn how to do it. And actually, if you really do it, it becomes easier. Okay, because we don't have the problem of you say you sent it and it went into my spam or something. So Kojo is there to help, and I can tell you this. I've had experience with Kojo, and he's an expert. I don't want you to hear this, but I'm just telling you that he is an expert. All right.
Yes. You're saying, for example, what were your motives and expectations in signing up? Any question here? Don't attempt to answer it as a question. Just for the sake of answering the question.
No, what I'm saying is answer it as a question, right? But you can expand on it, you can exceed it. It's, you know, and no, but I don't want you, it doesn't suit you to write a whole page on each question because I can't manage it myself, but it may be interesting. You know, it may form the content of your next book. But for this, you just really need to. There is no question in here that requires more than at least a quarter page of an answer. Yes. I said that, but now we have to look. Number 7 perhaps will, you know, reflect on each of the 5 key cues and enter your responses in your reflective notes. And that is going to take you a whole page. All right? But what I don't want you to do is to overwrite. Okay? So you have to. Now, here is something that is very, very important. In this assignment, I have said, after you have written and done all of that, which might end up to be 3 or 4 pages, okay? I want you to complete this exercise with a response, no more than 1 page, to exercises 2 and 3 in the appendix. And I'm going to show you what those are. When you have finished responding to this, you finish it off with a page in which you are going to respond to the exercise you've just done. But here it is. In the appendix, you will see that it is set out in figure 7. Figure 7 in the appendix. No, sorry. Figure 6. 7681. Yeah, figure 6. It says 2 personal home assignments. Appendix.
Exercise 3.
It's called exercise 3 in the appendix. 76 to 81. 76 to 81. 76 to 81. 76. Okay. 76 to 81. Exercise 3. Listen to what it says. Exercise 3 says, over one more. One more. Okay. Exercise 3 says, with the information gathered from the TPR assessment profile, which you did this morning, develop a self-directed leadership plan using the self-motivated, purpose-driven plan diagram as your guide. And the mistake there is not figure 7, but it is figure 5. So mark that, the page before. So in other words, I want you to go through that, and in a brief exercise, no more than probably half a page, you do this. And that becomes part of your assignment 1. Secondly, using the following features of the transformational leader, examine in what way you would regard Jesus as the optimum leader. Draw on the scriptures and class notes to support your presentation. And we did that this morning. All right? We went through that. How did Jesus express this? You don't need more than a page to do that exercise 3. And when you've done that, it should be added to your assignment 1. That's the last page of your assignment 1. You can go page and a half with it, but I don't. Again, what I want you to do is the exercise. You just need to convince me that you understand what you're talking about. You don't have to write an essay. Okay? That's number 1. Okay, back to course assignment 2. Course assignment 2. Course assignment 2. I need to explain this one because you have never done it before. Students will do developmental readings. Developmental, you're being developed. And keep a log journal to be turned in at the end of the course, when we have a date set for it. The themes and topics outlined may be used as research subjects. That page that we looked on, themes and topics and all that kind of stuff, you can borrow some of those, look at them. Along with other indicated course objectives. You look at the course objectives in your syllabus. Now this journal will end with a summary, self-assessment of the student's personal experience in the learning process of this course. In other words, I want you in perhaps a half a page at the end of this readings log to tell me what your experience has been like doing this course. Not just this week, but for the whole course. And now I want you to turn to the back. After the course content notes page, you see course developmental readings log. At the back. Right at the back. The second to last page, I think it is. This is assignment 2. It's explaining it. No. I'm going to go through it now, but I am open to us talking. Write me if you don't understand, and actually I'm going to do something for you. I am going to send you an example of a course development reading log entry.
2 pages?
What?
In all? Log. Per reading.
Per reading.
2 pages per reading.
No. No. Let's look at it. Developmental readings are selectively chosen by the student. I'm not going to tell you what to read. Based on your own personal interests and your desired skill, competence, needs. If you feel there's a weakness, or if you think there's something you're really interested in, go and find it. Read it. They are guided. You can't go and read something about, ISIS or something like that, or trucking. But they are guided by course objectives and outlines. It is intended for students to increase their perceptions, reasoning, and foundational learning related to course objectives and essential elements as they expand effectiveness in their professional and ministry area. In other words, this is you now as an adult. There's something I really wanted to explore. Sir just mentioned it in class, or I didn't understand it. I'm going to do some reading on it. No. Let me tell you this. You don't have to read a whole book. You might read 3 pages. It's selective reading. It's topical reading. Thematic reading. You may get a nice big book, sir. And you look in the index and you see, oh, page 320 to 323 deals with this stuff. That's all you need. Okay? So I'm not sending you to read books. I'm sending you. Yes. You see, I'm nice. You see? All right. You understand? Okay.
And it must be from one of the topics.
No. You choose your topic, but the topics here are a guide. Yes, I don't want you to go off and, write about the West Indies demise in Australia. Right? That will depress me. So what you need to do is make sure it's part of what we've been studying here. All right. Now, your course development readings log requires 15 to 20 itemized entries. So it's about 15 to 20 entries. Topics. Entries. I say entries, it may even be 2 on one topic. From the list of books recommended in the course and other supplemental books and academic journals, no required number of pages. I'm not going to say to you, you have to read 800 pages in all for everything. It doesn't matter to me at all. What I am looking at is what are you learning from one paragraph you read in a book. Okay? Now, an entry is defined as a new idea or concept or construct or a remote premise or an assumption or an operational definition or other new information that adds to knowledge. If it is something new, you call it an additive. A what?
Additive.
Not adjective.
Additive.
Additive, okay. Or if it presents a challenge. Sorry. If it is, I shouldn't say if it's new. If it's just an extension, an added stuff, something new for you, yeah. But if it is something that opposes what you always thought, you call it a variant. You say, I never thought of this before. As a matter of fact, I'm reading it because it validates my understanding. You call it a variant to your present understanding. Now, the reading log entries, both additive and variant, explain one concept and count as one entry. Each entry is one, just one.
So if I read Transformation Again by 3 authors, that's one entry?
No, that's what you read. What you put in there is one entry, even if you read it from 6 books. And the one entry will not be more than half a page. Half a page to a page. But it tells you now, look now, multiple entries of different new information may be taken from the same source. So you can read one book and make 3 entries. The log may be brief statements or bulleted items. In other words, you said you're making an entry on transformation and leadership. You say the characteristics of transformational leaders are 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't have to write an essay. You can bullet it. All right? But it must be accurate, systematic. Oh, and when you are saying that this is what you read from the book, I need the bibliography. In other words, you have to write and say, I got this from Corey, page, name of the book, page 230. All right, 230 to 231. And you tell us where the book comes from. Corey, published, and so on. Soon come to an end. All right. Now, at the end of the developmental readings log, you analyze and write a summary of the readings. So after you've finished all the reading log, you summarize your reading. You just summarize it and say, from my readings, this is what has happened to me. Now, I'm suggesting this format of the summary, which is no more than 1.5 to 2 pages long. Total number of entries, you need to tell me, put total number of entries. Each entry is one idea. Minimum number must be 15. You must have at least 15 entries, maximum 20. And it must be from 8 to 10 sources. So you can't just read one book and enter.
8 books.
At least 8. No. Sources, which means books. But I don't mean you need to read 8 books. Please help him. Yeah. Sources, but different sources. 8 to 10 different sources. Articles, so on. The total number of books referenced. In other words, you should break them down and say, I read, 4 books. Total number of journals, 3 journals. Should have at least 2 journals. The course objectives that you have covered in the reading, in other words, this topic, I've chosen this topic because this is one of the objective 3 in the syllabus. And then the summary reflection at the end for your benefit and improvement in developmental readings. Include a few paragraphs to analyze the following areas of your readings. Are my readings meeting my needs for the course of study? Types of sources I have used and the value of each type. How helpful were the readings for my practical paper? That's the course paper. In any particular areas, do I need to improve readings for further development? I haven't exhausted it. I want to expand on this topic. How will the information from these readings be helpful or useful in my ministry and profession? Okay, I know you don't fully understand it. I know it's a little confusing. I am going to send to you perhaps an example of 2 or 3 entries. I will send that to you. Okay? And if I don't send it Denise is going to write me and say, "Sir, did you remember to do that?" Yeah, I'm sure she will. She'll treat me like one of her truckers. All right. Finally.
Yeah, due dates,
Yes. It's in the syllabus. Okay. Number 3. The term paper. Or the course paper. This is the one that Andrea is waiting on. She loves to write.
Audrey.
Sorry, I said Andrea. It's Audrey, eh? Yeah. Probably she looks like Andrea. A course paper will be done as an analytic study of a given local church with the student's assessment of its administrative leadership capacity for problem solving. That's in the assignment, in the syllabus.
Look at the dates that you gave us.
Yeah, don't look at that yet. The dates are, I'm going to explain the dates.
Oh, no. Explain. Not explain her.
Yes.
I'm a transactional leader. Okay? The student's assessment of its administrative leadership capacity for problem solving, for church growth, or church impact in the community. The student is expected to apply learnings derived from the course to their analytical assessment and recommendations. Now, turn to the last page in your CCN. So, I help you. Look at it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't have to go through it. We don't have the time for it. All right. Okay. It is true. Yeah. What I want, yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go back then to the syllabus. Last thing, participation. Sorry to tell you this after we've been through more than half the course. An assessment will be made of the students' interactive engagement in and contribution to the learning experience, both with the staff facilitators as well as with their classmates. In other words, if you help me to learn anything, you know I'm going to grade you high. Or if you were very interactive and very much engaged, and I don't mean by that you chat a lot, because some of you are quieter than others, but I can see in your disposition whether you're with it or not. Okay? And you're part of the learning experience of the whole group. All right. Now, finally, next week. All right. Let me mention the assignments. Next week. Next week. Next week, from the 2nd, you're on your own. But I'm available to you. Yes.
So we can ask you questions as you go.
Very important. Let me tell you why. Because next week, I want you to do your CCN responses. That's how you're going to review this. But I don't want you to turn them in. I want you to keep them. Very important. Next week, I want you to begin to do your readings log. Use it as a time as you go over the work and you say, I want to know a little more about this. You say, I'm going to. Here are 10, 12, 15, 18 topics I want to research. Okay? So you measure yourself and you do them and you measure. So, but I don't want you to turn them in. Not next week. That exercise is really the most exciting one because you're really going to learn a lot. And quite frankly, I learn a lot from you. Okay? Because you're going to look at stuff I've never read. Okay? And next week, I want you to begin to think of the class the church you want to look at. Okay? Just begin to think about it and so on.
Our own church.
Yes. So you look at the church. Yeah. Because I'm going to show you how to do it just before we leave. Yes. Yeah, it's easy. No, I need to give you this. You're going to get out here. So next week is really on your time, your discipline. The following week, you're going to have tutorials. So you're going to come back together on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Really? Even your church? But not CGST. No man, you tell your church that you're do it. Yeah. But you're a leader. You're going to organize it.
So what time are you talking about?
It's right there, you know. See there? Session 5, Monday the 9th. Oh, it doesn't say the time. Yeah. It's really from. It doesn't give you a time. Okay, I will collaborate with Dr. Bertrand. He's the one that's going to be with you. It may not be more than 2 hours, an hour, 2 hours. It's very flexible. It's really is a time that you are going to review these areas.
Oh, we're doing what we would have done.
Yes, and I want you to use it as an opportunity to teach Dr. Bergeron a thing or two. In other words, he's going to be asking you, what did you learn? And you're going to say, well, you know, and you're going to do like Keon did and say, well, when you're dealing with so and so, okay, do you understand, Dr. Bergeron? Yeah. Okay, and he will just take you through, and it is the opportunity for you to think and look again at your CCN, and then you can if you need to add anything, you learn from each other, your understandings become even greater, and you can adjust your CCNs. Okay? And then you turn it in on Friday the 13th. The developmental readings are Monday the 16th, and the term paper is on Friday the 20th. Okay? So,
Repeat again, sir.
it's right there. It's right here. Okay, finally, I never knew you'd have come to this point. The term paper. Here is why the term paper is going to be easy. The term paper, you're going to use this as a data collecting instrument. This is in your appendix, 1995. It's near the back. Now, What I'm advising you is that you find in your church a group, I would say no less than 20 persons, to ask them to do that questionnaire.
Okay.
It's not you going to do it alone. It is about 20 persons. Now, I would advise you to make it a cross-section of persons. You don't want to just ask the choir members, because it will be skewed in a certain way. You want a cross-section. Secondly, I would advise you to include some of your leaders, like elders or deacons or ministers. All right? At least 20 persons, and it could be for your own, benefit. Don't go to 100 persons. Just 20, so you can collate the information. And you will notice on page 4 of that, it tells you how to collate it. And I'm giving you a sneak preview. Things are random areas, but they are divided into devotional items, domestic items, and dominion items. So when you are collecting the data, you will notice that the devotional questions are 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, 12, and 20. And you enter it on the next page.
So how many persons responded to prayer and intercession? Over there for?
No. How much is how much is the ratings?
That rate, the rating.
So you have 20 persons and you add up their ratings. All right?
Yeah.
And you put them there. And then you total it. And then the domestic ratings and the dominion ratings. Guess what you're going to discover? How your church is skewed. Whether they're balanced, or whether they're more devotional, or whether they're more domestic, or whether they are hardly ever dominion. And then when you're doing your assignment, you are going to be looking as well at how your church is structured to see whether, in order to bring greater balance, you need leadership that can handle devotional stuff. Leadership that can bring a focus on dominion. And not only leadership, but programs. Okay? Don't worry about this right now, because you have a couple of weeks. So it's going to become more and more obvious. But I'm sharing it all now, so that when you're going over the material, you know that you're going over the material, because you're going to have to draw on these things in order to do your assignment.
Time is very short.
Yes.
It's short.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it was my pleasure. Coming to know you, I will carry your faces with me. I'll send you a copy of what your faces look like, when I write to you next. And I will send you my telephone number, my email address. It's on here. Yeah. And it may be that we could Skype.
Okay.
So Skyping is an option too. So I will send you my Skype name. Please, you can find it out by just putting the email and inviting me, or I'll invite you anyway. I don't want to give a long speech, but I really do want to say that this has been a very good group. I teach several different groupings of you over the years, and this group has a character of its own. I will tell you more about it at another time when I write to you. But you have been a very good group, and you've been a very committed group. I think it's the first class I've had where I've had 100% attendance in crunch time. You didn't have to come today. You didn't have, you know, understand? I understand why one or two of you weren't here the first day. The other thing I want to say is I really do appreciate the fact that you have come from so far, because we were prepared. I didn't expect you. And I've done a course before in which, I don't know if you're the person, were you in a course with me before? No. Before. So you are the person. You are the person from St. Elizabeth, and you got pregnant. Look at that. You didn't plan your thing. Anyhow, it was just for this time. That's good. So thanks a lot. You're all different, and it has made the class a very interesting one. God be with you. Your communicating with me is also part of the grading, because it helps me to see that you're with it. And I just want you to know you're not bothering me if you write. Okay, don't say, boy, I can't bother you, must think where Skype, phone, that's maybe expensive.
Sir, we also appreciate you. I say that I'm very sure I'm saying something. Your style is very accommodating. It's easy for us to grasp and learn the concept and what you are sharing. I know it's not the end of it, but even as you share your sentiments, I think it is in order for us to do the same. And we also want to thank you for your patience. Thank you for the lovely food. It's nice. You can tell him that I think we are probably leading to your side to the sweets around.
Yeah.
But thank you, sir, and we wish you all the best on your journey. You know, safe travel, and we really hope to continue your discussion.
Definitely.
Thank you, sir.
Lord be with you.
Sorry that you're washing in the end.
No, I understand it. I took you through.
Can you just take this with us and then photos
Take.
Should we end?
with the students?
Coach, we want you to come and take a photo with us.
Okay.